And welcome back to the online learning session. Today we'll be moving ahead in chapter 2, Nationalism in India. Let's quickly see the topics to be covered in this lesson. Number 1, the limits of civil disobedience movement. Number 2, effects of the religious nature of the nationalists and their inclination towards religious activities. Number 3, gap between the Congress and the Muslim League getting widened, never to be bridged again. So let us begin our discussion from this topic, the limits of civil disobedience movement. Students, when we study about the limits of civil disobedience movement, we see that certain sections of the society did not participate in the movement. Among all these sections, one of the sections is industrial workers and other workers. So they had a limited participation in the civil disobedience movement. Let us go through the points to see why. In the first point, students, we see that the industrial working classes did not participate in the civil disobedience movement in large numbers, except in the Nagpur region. Why was it so that the industrial workers did not participate in large numbers? The reason for this lies in point number 2. We see that the industrialists came closer to the Congress, therefore it made workers stayed aloof. Now what will happen in this situation, students? See, from a long time there were two problems of the workers: longer working hours and low wages. Now what happens if you are an industrialist at that point of time? An industrialist at that point of time did not want to pay more to the workers, plus industrialists wanted that they should work for longer hours. But this was a problem, this was an issue for the working classes, for the working sections. Now what happened? Since industrialists also came closer to the Congress, they were also financing a bit of their campaigns. That's why at that point of time, where we see Congress raising the problems, issues, interests of the other sections of the society, it did not actually raise the issues related to the workers. Why? Because these workers were working for these industrialists, clear? And these industrialists came closer to the Congress. Let us see ahead, move ahead. But in spite of that, some workers did participate in the civil disobedience movement. Now let us see who are these workers. Some workers selectively adopted some of the ideas of the Gandhian program. What was this program? It was like boycott of foreign goods as a part of their own movement against low wages and poor working conditions. This is what we were talking about right now. What happened next? We see that there were strikes by railway workers as well in 1930 and dock workers as well in 1932. So what happens? In 1930, thousands of workers in Chota Nagpur tin mines wore Gandhi caps and participated in protest rallies and boycott campaigns. As we have seen here, that they did not participate in large numbers, but they did participate in a very small number. Clear? And what was the region? The region was Chota Nagpur. And what was the particular industry? The industry was tin mines. Clear? And the year was 1930. After that, what do we actually see? But the Congress was reluctant to include workers' demands as a part of its program of struggle. We have already seen the reason, because industrialists were closer, and since industrialists were closer to the Congress, they would never want the issues of the workers to be raised by the Congress party. Clear? It felt that this would alienate industrialists. This is what we are talking about here. It felt that it will make the industrialists alien, it would alienate, it would separate, it will create a gap between the Congress and the industrialists and divide the anti-imperial forces. So that is why we see workers not to be participating with full enthusiasm in the civil disobedience movement. Clear? Let us move ahead. Now we see the second section, which also becomes a point of the limited participation and the limit of the civil disobedience movement, are the Dalits or the depressed classes. Clear? We see the nation's untouchables, as they were termed as untouchables, who were from around 1930s, had begun to call themselves Dalit or oppressed. So these people who were from depressed classes, who did not get their due rights right from the beginning in our Indian society, they came to call themselves Dalit or oppressed right from 1930s. Now what happened? We also see that Congress ignored the Dalits. Why did Congress ignore the Dalits? Because it had a fear of offending the Sanatanis, the conservative high caste Hindus. Clear? As it has been a general perception that Congress was a party of upper caste Hindus, elite class, educated class, so it did not have lower working classes or lower classes of the society, so the question of untouchables was quite far. That's why we have seen that Congress ignored the Dalits right from the beginning, and that is why Dalits were also getting farther. Clear? And we see that since Congress ignored the Dalits, the interests of the Dalits, for the fear of offending the Sanatanis, the Dalits never participated in the civil disobedience movement with enthusiasm. So this also became one of the limitations of the civil disobedience movement, as it could not absorb the complete sections of the society right from the beginning to the end in its movement's purview. Clear? Next we see what were the steps taken to remove this kind of a mindset mentality from the society. Here Mahatma Gandhi comes into play. So Mahatma Gandhi actually declared at that point of time, he tried to make all the people, all the high caste people or all the congressmen realize that Swaraj would not come. Let me repeat, Mahatma Gandhi tried to make all the nationalists, particularly belonging to the Congress, that Swaraj or independence would not come for 100 years if untouchability was not eliminated. Clear, students? So here Mahatma Gandhi reiterates the fact that Swaraj is not going to come for 100 years in India if we do not eliminate untouchability collectively. So what did he do for these untouchables, these so-called untouchables? He called the untouchables Harijan. As you know that Hari in Hindi means God and Jan means people, so it meant the children of God. Clear? He coined a new term for these people, the untouchables, as Harijan, which meant children of God, a little bit to dignify their position in the society. Now what did he do further? He organized satyagraha to secure them entry into temples and access to public wells, tanks, roads and schools. Clear? Usually you see, students, that in our Indian society we have different classification on the basis of caste. So on the basis of caste, even today in our society, a few of the sections are considered to be upper class, a few of the sections are considered to be middle class and lower class. And what happens even today, we see in certain regions of India that even today these depressed classes do not have entry into temples, access to public wells, tanks, roads and schools, and they are even beaten and sometimes even killed. That's why we need to pay more attention to this topic, as it has also been reiterated by Mahatma Gandhi. Clear? He himself cleaned toilets. Mahatma Gandhi himself cleaned toilets to dignify the work of the Bhangi. Bhangi here means the sweepers, and persuaded upper castes to change their heart and give up the sin of untouchability. What a good term he had coined at that point of time, the sin of untouchability. Clear? In order to dignify the status of these depressed classes, the people belonging to the lower caste, the Dalits or the depressed classes or the oppressed, he coins the term untouchables, and therefore he says that Swaraj is not going to come if the untouchability is not eliminated from India. Therefore we see that he organized satyagraha to secure the rights of these people so far as the entry into temples was concerned, access to public wells, tanks, roads and schools were concerned at that point of time. And in a bit of that, we also see that he himself cleaned toilets to dignify the work of the Bhangi. Bhangi means sweepers, and therefore persuaded the people of the upper castes to change their heart and give up the sin of untouchability. Now let us see what were the steps taken by these people, the people who belong to the oppressed or the depressed classes. What were the steps taken in order to alleviate their position in the society? We see that many Dalit leaders were keen on a different political solution to the problems of the community. Here they are going for a different political solution. And what was this solution all about? They began organizing themselves. They started organizing themselves. They started demanding reserved seats in educational institutions and a separate electorate that would choose Dalit members for legislative councils. Now they have started organizing themselves in order to secure their due rights. And For that, they started demanding reserved seats in educational institutions and a separate electorate that would choose Dalit members for legislative councils. Just to recall, electorate also means a constituency. Clear? Number 3, we see political empowerment. They believed, who believed? The Dalits or the oppressed or the depressed would resolve the problems of their social disabilities. What was this social disability all about? Their status in the society, the way they were treated in the society as a depressed class, as an oppressed class, as low caste people. Next we see, however, Dalit participation in the civil disobedience movement was therefore limited, particularly in the Maharashtra and the Nagpur region, where their organization was quite strong, where the organization of these Dalit people was very strong. We see a very limited participation and a very strong limited participation of these people in the regions of Maharashtra, especially Nagpur. Therefore, what we see, we have already discussed this while we were discussing the second roundtable conference. So what happened at that point of time? 1930, Dr. Ambedkar organized all these people into depressed classes association, and the point which we see in point number 2 here, we see that they had started demanding reserved seats in educational institutions as well as a separate electorate. So with these two demands, Dr. Ambedkar went to the second roundtable conference, and there they discussed on these issues. Finally, what do we see? We see the Pune Pact to be signed by Gandhiji and Dr. Ambedkar. The Pune Pact, about which we have already discussed, brought a lot of changes for these people in the society. It also alleviated their position to a certain extent in the society. Next, what do we see? We see effects of the religious nature of the nationalists, and their inclination towards religious activities. Therefore, we see Muslims' lukewarm response and limited participation. Now, what was this phase all about? Let us go through that. Some of the Muslim political organizations in India were also lukewarm in their response to the civil disobedience movement. It meant that the Muslim political organizations did not want to actively participate in the civil disobedience movement for making it a success. Why was it so? We see that after the decline of the non-cooperation Khilafat movement, a large section of Muslims moreover felt alienated from the Congress, felt distanced from the Congress. Clear? And why did it happen? What were the circumstances which led to the happening of this? Let us go through the next topic. We see that development of certain conditions which would lead to a rift between the Congress and the Muslim League. Now, what were these conditions? These are the conditions which we have here referred in the topic as the religious nature of the nationalists and their inclination towards the religious activities. So let us see the conditions. Students, we see that from the mid 1920s the Congress came to be more visibly associated with openly Hindu religious nationalist groups. Here we see religion getting into politics. We see Congress to be openly associating with some Hindu religious nationalist groups like the Hindu Mahasabha. And what could be a possible consequence of this, students? We see as relations between Hindus and Muslims worsened. We see the relations between the Hindus and Muslims worsened. Each community organized religious processions with militant fervor. Now, what happened when the people were seen to be getting openly inclined towards religious activities? The other groups, the other people who also belong to certain different religion would also start organizing religious processions. And what happened? There was a militant fervor, there was a sort of protest, there was a sort of anger against each other. So that is why we see that all the communities started organizing, particularly the Hindus and the Muslims, religious processions with militant fervor against each other, provoking Hindu-Muslim communal clashes and riots in various cities. So one of the important developments that it also, the thing which started from the association with religious groups led to worsening of the relations between the Hindus and Muslims. Therefore, we see that they developed a militant fervor against each other while they organized religious processions, and that led to riot, that culminated into riots. And with every riot deepened the distance between the two communities. So in this point, what do we actually see? We see that Muslims are also getting distanced from the movement. Now let us try to examine the factors which widened this gap between these two communities, these two sections of the society. First, we see the important differences were over the question of representation in the future assemblies that were to be elected. Clear? Second point, we see Muhammad Ali Jinnah, one of the leaders of the Muslim League, was willing to give up the demand for separate electorates. Students, we see that after the All India Muslim League was formed around 1905 and 1906, it raised one of the important demands of separate electorates based on their religion. Clear? So what happened? Here we see that one of the important prominent leaders of the Muslim League, Jinnah, was willing to give up the demand of separate electorates. He said that I am ready, that I don't want separate electorates but it had a condition. If Muslims were assured reserved seats in the Central Assembly, we see that he was demanding reserved seats in the Central Assembly and representation in proportion to population in the Muslim dominated provinces. Now what regions, what provinces of that point of time were Muslim dominated? They were Bengal and they were Punjab. Bengal on the east side of India and Punjab on the western side of India. Clear? Let us see the next point. Negotiations over the question of representation continued, but all hope of resolving the issue at the All Parties Conference in 1928 disappeared when M.R. Jaikar of the Hindu Mahasabha strongly opposed efforts at compromise. Now what would happen at this point of time in this situation? So what was the issue? It actually led to the alienation from the Congress of the Muslims. Large sections of the Muslims could not respond to the call for a united struggle. See students, we need to understand one of the important points here. We see that the depressed classes get a reserved seats, a percentage of reserved seats in the central legislature as well as the provincial legislatures. So the Muslim League raising the demands could have been one of the genuine demands from their side. So when they see that this demand was getting completely opposed by some leaders like M.R. Jaikar at the All Parties Conference, who actually belonged to the Hindu Mahasabha, started alienating them, started separating them, letting them develop this feeling of alienation from the mainstream society of India. That's why we see that they felt alienated from the Congress, as Congress or majority of its leaders were not readily accepting the demands. Therefore we see large sections of Muslims not responding to the call for a united struggle. And with this, what came further? With this, we have already seen in this slide that the relations of the Hindus and Muslims worsened, and they also developed a militant fervor, a militant tendency against each other. What were other things which Muslims were facing at that point of time? On one hand, what happened? Muslims started feeling alienated from the mainstream society. Second, they started developing a feeling of being reduced to the level of a minority within India. They feared that the culture and identity of minorities would be submerged under the domination of a Hindu majority. So what they started seeing all this thing as at that point of time, they started seeing all these circumstances, all these developments at that point of time, that India is going to become a nation of Hindu majority and they will be reduced to a status of minority, where they also feared that their culture and identity would be submerged. Let us quickly try to summarize all the things which we have studied now. Students, first of all, we saw the limits of the civil disobedience movement. In the limits of the civil disobedience movement, what did we actually learn? We saw that a few sections of the society were not participating with full enthusiasm in the civil disobedience movement. Among these, one of the important sections was the industrial workers and other workers. Other workers included the railway workers and the dock workers. What were their issues? Their issues were long working hours and little wages, lower wages. Now what happens next? We see that industrialists came closer to Congress. This became the main reason for the workers to stay aloof, to separate themselves from the movement. We see that the Congress was reluctant to what? Reluctant to include workers' demands as a part of its program of struggle. Okay. Now the reason for this we have already examined, that since industrialists came closer to the Congress and workers were working under the industrialists, therefore Congress would have never raised their demands. Okay. Next we see another section which did not participate in the civil disobedience movement with full enthusiasm were the Dalits. They felt that the Congress had ignored the Dalits for fear of offending the Sanatanis, the conservative high caste Hindus. But what happened at this point of time? An important development by Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi reiterates that Swaraj would not come for 100 years if untouchability was not eliminated. Therefore, he calls all these untouchables as Harijans. Harijan means children of God, and also organized satyagraha to secure them entry into temples, access to public wells, tanks, roads and schools. Next we see now the Dalits started finding solution for themselves. Now they started organizing themselves into political groups, and they started demanding reserved seats in educational institutions as well as a separate electorate to choose Dalit members to go to the legislative councils. Now therefore we see it is due to these reasons there was a limited participation of the Dalits in the civil disobedience movement, and it was very much restricted in the region of Maharashtra, particularly Nagpur region, where the organization of these Dalits were very strong. Clear? Next we see as a result what happened. 1932 they raised the demands of separate electorates as well as reserved seats in the legislatures, and this culminated into the Pune Pact. And here we learned why was this gap and why it could never be bridged again. We see that one of the prominent leaders of the Muslim League, known as Muhammad Ali Jinnah, was willing to give up the demand for separate electorates if Muslims were assured reserved seats in the Central Assembly and representation in proportion to population in the Muslim dominated provinces. And what were these provinces at that point of time? In the eastern India it was Bengal, in the western India it was Punjab. Now what happened? All the hope of reconciliation went in vain. All the efforts made to reconcile went in vain when certain leaders like M.R. Jaikar of the Hindu Mahasabha at the All Parties Conference strongly opposed efforts at compromise. They were not ready to compromise at any cost. Now this led to the widening of this gap, and the Muslims started feeling alienated from the Congress. They also felt that they could not respond to the call for a united struggle. Okay, because for a united struggle we need unity, and here we could not forge a unity. The Muslims and the Hindus could not forge a unity. Therefore they started feeling, the leaders and intellectuals of Muslims started feeling and started expressing their concerns about the status of Muslims as a minority within India. Plus they feared that the culture and identity of minorities would be submerged under the domination of a Hindu majority. They anticipated, they felt, they expected that India is going to be a country of Hindu majority and our culture and identity would be submerged.